Today, our rooster was chased again. It happened as I went out to chop wood after lunch. While climbing the mountain, I heard the flapping of wings behind me and our rooster's relentless clucking. Startled, I turned and saw them fighting once more. Jumsoon's rooster, a big, sharp-beaked fellow, was mercilessly attacking our smaller rooster. It wasn't just picking on him, but pecking fiercely, sometimes at his face, then pausing momentarily before striking again at his comb. This vicious cycle repeated endlessly. Our poor rooster could only kick and scream as the brute's beak tore into him. Fresh blood dripped from his still unhealed comb each time he was pecked. Watching the scene in silence, it felt as if my own head was being pecked, and anger surged within me. I grabbed a large stick and rushed towards Jumsoon's rooster, contemplating giving it a solid whack. But then I hesitated, ending up just waving the stick aimlessly, merely separating them. Jumsoon must have stirred up trouble again. It seemed she was intentionally trying to provoke me. I couldn't fathom why that darn girl had been so cocky lately, acting as if she had something against me. For instance, just 4 days ago, when I was harvesting potatoes, I hadn't done anything to her. Yet there she was, sneaking up behind me while I was mending fences. She approached silently, trying to be stealthy, and suddenly said, "Hey, are you working alone?" making an unnecessary fuss. Until yesterday, we barely exchanged words, just nodding politely when we passed each other. But today, she was suddenly so bold. Seeing a nearly grown girl watching a man work was unnerving. "I can handle this alone. Why should I get more people to help me?" I retorted. To which she replied, "Do you enjoy working alone? Or why are you fixing the fence already when it's not even summer yet?" She nagged like this, but then, afraid someone might overhear, she'd cover her mouth with her hand and giggle quietly. There was nothing particularly funny, but with the weather getting warmer, I began to wonder if that darn girl had lost her mind. And then, a little while later, she looked around, pulled out 3 large potatoes from under her apron, and thrust them under my chin. The warm steam rising from them showed they were freshly baked. "You don't have anything like this at home, do you?" she said loudly, feigning indifference. She urged me to quickly eat them here, as it could cause trouble if others found out. Then she added, "Hey, they say spring potatoes are delicious." "I don't eat potatoes. You eat them," I replied without turning my head, pushing the potatoes away with my working hand over my shoulder. But she still didn't leave. Her breathing grew rougher and more irregular, which struck me as odd. Wondering what was going on, I finally turned around and was genuinely surprised. We had been in this neighborhood for nearly 3 years, but I had never seen Jumsoon's face so flushed like a ripe radish. She glared at me intensely, as if she held a grudge, and even shed tears. Then, grabbing her basket again, she clenched her teeth and ran across the ridge as if she were about to collapse. Jumsoon was usually someone who took such comments in stride. When the village elder said, "You should get married soon, shouldn't you?" and laughed, she would respond, "Don't worry, I'll get married when the time comes." She accepted things naturally. She wasn't the type to feel embarrassed or cry out of anger. If she was upset, she would rather smack me with the basket and run away than show her tears. But after that encounter, whenever she saw me, it was as if she wanted to devour me. Even though rejecting the potatoes might have seemed rude, what was the point of saying, "You don't have anything like this at home, do you?" We were already indebted to them, relying on their goodwill to farm the land. When we first arrived in the village without a home, Jumsoon's father graciously allowed us to use his land to build a house. It was an act of kindness, and when my parents lacked food during the farming season, they would diligently visit Jumsoon's parents and receive generous help. They often praised her parents as rare and virtuous. Moreover, my mother warned me how intense rumors could get if boys and girls of 17 walked around together. If I messed things up with Jumsoon, we could lose our land and home. But now, this darn girl seemed determined to pick a fight with me, as if she wanted to dry me out and kill me. The next evening, after she had shed tears, as the sun was setting, I was descending the mountain with a load of wood when I heard the sound of a chicken being killed. Wondering if it might be from someone else's house, I turned towards Jumsoon's place, and my eyes widened in shock. There was Jumsoon, sitting alone in her yard, tightly holding our chicken in front of her skirt, mercilessly beating it and saying, "Die, you darn chicken, die!" She struck it with such force that it seemed as though she wanted to crush its skull, pounding its buttocks with her fist as if to ensure it could never lay eggs again. My heart raced and my limbs trembled. After scanning the surroundings, I realized there was no one else at Jumsoon's house. I raised the stick I had grabbed and struck the fence with it, shouting, "You darn girl! Do you want someone else's chicken to never lay eggs again?" But Jumsoon showed no sign of being startled at all. She just continued to sit there calmly as if dealing with her own chicken, mercilessly beating it to death. It seemed she had likely caught the chicken in anticipation of my return from the mountain and was now taunting me by killing it right in front of me. However, I knew I couldn't just barge into someone else's house and fight with a girl. I realized my situation was quite unfavorable, so whenever the chicken got beaten, all I could do was strike the fence with a stick. The more I hit the fence, the more the twigs would back off, leaving only their skeleton behind. But no matter how much I thought about it, I was the one who ended up at a loss. "Ah, you darn girl. Do you want someone else's chicken to never lay eggs?" I shouted again, raising my stick like an axe. Finally, she came towards the fence, glaring at me, and tossed the chicken aside. "Oh, what a dirty chicken! Disgusting! Nobody told you to keep a dirty chicken with you. You damn girl!" As I turned away from the fence in disgust, feeling on the verge of exploding with rage, our startled chicken suddenly splattered damp feces onto my forehead. In that moment, it seemed as though the chicken had contracted a serious illness. From behind, in a voice that seemed to echo only to me, I heard, "You foolish lad. Hey, are you a coward? Hey, is your father a eunuch? Wah, what did you say?" I stammered, turning sharply to confront Jumsoon. But instead of seeing her head above the fence, she had already turned away, continuing to hurl insults. Despite her taunts, I didn't say a word in protest. The frustration was so intense that my fingernails dug into the rock I was gripping, nearly breaking, and tears streamed down my cheeks. But Jumsoon's harassment didn't end there. Although she claimed to like combs, she would sneakily bring her rooster to our coop when no one was around and provoke fights between our rooster and hers. Her rooster, bred to be aggressive, often left our rooster with bleeding, swollen eyes. Sometimes our rooster wouldn't even come out of hiding, so she would bring bait and provoke him further. I couldn't stand it any longer. One day, I took our rooster and secretly went to the jars of chili paste. They say feeding chili paste to a rooster makes him as strong as a raging bull. I scooped out a plate of chili paste from the jar and fed it to the rooster's beak. The rooster didn't hesitate and eagerly ate almost half the plate. Then, to let the chili paste take effect, I kept him confined in the coop for a while. After setting down my burden in the field and taking a brief rest, I emerged outside with the rooster in my arms. Thankfully, there was nobody around except for Jumsoon, who was either tearing old clothes or working with cotton inside her house. I approached the area where Jumsoon's rooster was playing and gently placed our rooster on the ground, observing quietly. The two roosters began to fight, but at first it seemed futile. Despite their fierce pecking, our rooster continued to bleed, yet he fought back vigorously, flapping his wings and jumping around, but in vain. However, something unexpected happened. As if inspired, our rooster suddenly leaped forward, clawing at the other rooster's eyes and pecking at its comb. The larger rooster seemed taken aback and hesitated, stepping back. Seizing the opportunity, our smaller rooster launched another swift attack, causing even the fierce opponent to bleed profusely. All right, I get it. Feeding only chili paste does the trick, I thought to myself, feeling quite satisfied. At that moment, Jumsoon, who had come out to see what the commotion was about and stood beside me, furrowed her brows, clearly displeased by the unexpected turn of events. I applauded with both hands, slapping my thighs, well done, and felt a surge of exhilaration coursing through me. However, my excitement was short-lived. Soon, I found myself standing motionless like a pillar. Despite our rooster's retaliation, he couldn't land a single blow against the relentless attacks of the larger rooster. Watching this, Jumsoon chuckled, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Feeling helpless, I intervened to rescue our rooster, grabbing him and heading back home. I regretted not feeding him more chili paste. Acting in haste had left me with a bitter sense of remorse. Upon returning home, I applied more chili paste under his beak, but to my dismay, he refused to eat, perhaps due to the agitation caused by the recent events. I laid the rooster flat and gently inserted a bamboo pipe into its mouth. Then I poured diluted chili paste through the spout, little by little. The rooster struggled, kicking and sneezing, but I reasoned that the immediate discomfort was a small price to pay compared to the daily agony of being pecked. After a couple of spouts of the chili paste mixture, I decided to stop. The once lively rooster suddenly twisted its neck and fell limp from my grip. Fearing my father might see, I quickly hid it in the coop. By morning, it had regained consciousness. It turned out that the darn girl must have taken advantage of the opportunity when no one was home to sneak into our house and take the rooster from the coop. I had to catch the rooster again and confine it, although I felt uneasy about it. Nevertheless, circumstances compelled me to ascend the mountain to gather firewood. As I chopped pine trees, my thoughts swirled with anger and frustration. Despite everything, I felt a burning urge to confront that troublesome girl, Jumsoon. I decided that this time I would give her a piece of my mind. Firmly clutching a piece of wood, I briskly walked down the path. As I drew closer, the sound of a leaf flute halted my steps abruptly. Yellow spicebush flowers dotted the spaces between the thick boulders at the foot of the mountain. Among them, Jumsoon sat playing the flute with a somber air. What struck me more were the incessant squawks of a rooster nearby. It was clear that she had taken my rooster and placed it in my path for another fight while she sat there playing her flute. Tears flowed down my cheeks like a flood as my anger surged. I couldn't even take a moment to set down my burden properly. I dropped it right there and rushed forward with the carrying pole, driven by the urgency of the situation. As I approached, my fears were confirmed. Our rooster was bleeding heavily, teetering on the brink of death. To make matters worse, Jumsoon remained still, playing her flute, unfazed by the chaos. My anger boiled over. Once rumored to be the prettiest girl in the village, and someone I once thought of as diligent and beautiful, Jumsoon now seemed more like a cunning fox. In a sudden rush of fury, I struck the larger rooster with the stick I carried. It fell, unable to move, and died on the spot. I stood there, dazed, until Jumsoon's fierce eyes bore into me. She pushed me backward with surprising strength. "You! Why did you kill someone else's rooster?" she demanded. "So what?" I retorted, starting to get up. "You jerk! Whose rooster was it?" she exclaimed, her arms flailing, making me stumble back again. Anger and shame washed over me as I realized my mistake. I wondered if this meant I would lose my land and be thrown out of my house. I struggled to my feet, wiping away tears with my sleeve. Jumsoon approached and asked, "So you won't do it again, will you?" Her question felt like a lifeline, though I wasn't sure of her true intentions. I replied bluntly, "Yeah," while continuing to wipe the tears from my face. "From now on, if I see you behave like that again, I'll make life unbearable for you," she warned. Yeah, I won't do it anymore," I promised, desperate to put an end to this ordeal. "Don't worry about the dead rooster. I'll take care of it," she said. Then, as if driven by some unseen force, she grabbed my shoulders, and I stumbled backward. The force of her push sent me tumbling into a pile of golden spicebush flowers. Their spicy, fragrant scent enveloped me, making me feel dizzy as if the ground were slipping away beneath me. "Don't mention this to anyone," she commanded. "Of course," I agreed hastily. After a while, I heard a voice calling from below. "Jumsoon, where did that girl go instead of sewing?" Her mother's voice sounded furious, as if she had just returned from somewhere. Filled with fear, Jumsoon stealthily crept under the flowers and crawled down to the foot of the mountain. I had no choice but to press myself against a rock and start crawling back up the mountain, away from the scene. Published in 1936.